Thanks, Dennis. Good morning. I'm a lifelong Chicagoan, too. My problem is I no longer live here. But that's my tough luck. As Dennis said, I work at the Annie Casey Foundation and head up a center we call Center for Family Economic Success, and our essential mission is to really link people, place, and opportunity. What I thought I'd do today is just give you a little sense of kind of what we do, and then tell you a story about one particular neighborhood we've worked in where I think we were able to really build the kind of capacity on the ground in a low-income community to really be able to go after a whole variety of resources. And then I'll draw out of that some lessons that I think will be relevant for our discussion. So Casey is a kids foundation, and our basic take is that kids do better, particularly low-income kids in low-income communities, if their families are strong, and in turn, families do well if they're in supportive communities. Now, family strengthening is about economic opportunity, it's about access to trusted services, it's about social networks and supports. Supportive communities really brings us right to the matter of place, and how do you make a place supportive for families. We've had about 20 years of experience trying to figure that out in a whole variety of what we call community change initiatives, where we try to link specific development projects in neighborhoods with regional economies, and even within a broader policy frame. Now, I should say, a lot of my work is what Jerry on the last panel and from Mattoon was talking about, workforce development. I think Maureen will talk about that as well. So one thing you might ask is, well, why does the Kids Foundation care a lot about place, about neighborhood? Why is that an issue you worry about? Well, there's a couple of reasons. I mean, one, because we're focused on those low-income kids in particular, we're very concerned about the way in which poverty is not randomly distributed, but it really concentrates in neighborhoods. And all poverty is bad, but when it concentrates, it affects kids and families even more. And that has to do with the way place or neighborhood is organized and constrains sometimes those changes. Secondly, neighborhood is where a lot of pieces come together. There's no one single solution to getting ahead, getting connected to opportunity. You need schools, you need safety, you need services, you need affordable housing. All those pieces come together, and very often that's where, at the neighborhood level, is where we can really try to fit these together, however difficult it is. Third, you know, a lot of us, particularly in the funding world, are really concerned about scale and saturation. We like to do good small projects. We know we need innovation, but at some point, given the large number of kids and families who we want to work with, we need to scale it up. And neighborhood offers a way to really reach lots of people. And then finally, last but not least, there's a lot of evidence that place is really related to economic mobility. And without sort of place supports, it's very difficult for kids and families to move ahead. So with that said, let me share a story, and it's from a 10-year community change initiative that's not quite done, and the way we count 10 years isn't very accurate. It's probably about 12 or 13 years now. And it's called Making Connections, and it's a community change initiative that's been across the country. And what I'll do is kind of tell the story a little bit and then draw out some of the challenges. And I did a lot of this work on the ground, so I'm speaking about it not simply as an investor from 3,000 miles away, which often foundations do, but I actually experienced some of the pain and joy of doing this on the ground. The real goal of Making Connections was to scale up neighborhood strategies, what we call a two-generation approach that would work with economic opportunity for parents and access to early childhood education and school for kids. The neighborhood is named White Center, and it's right outside of Seattle, about 25,000 people. It's an older suburb, it's not in the city, and what's really crazy about it is it's unincorporated. Many of you may work in unincorporated areas. They don't have much governance. It's in South King County near the airport. It was an older, white working class neighborhood over the years, but in the mid-90s it really started undergoing rapid demographic change. Southeast Asian, West African, Bosnian. It's one of those neighborhoods that's 25,000, but it must have 30 or 40 languages there. Multiple immigrant groups working. So that's kind of where we worked, and it had been thought of as a potential enterprise zone, so there were policymakers thinking about it. It was on the verge of a HUD Hope 6 public housing renovation. The county exec at the time, a guy named Ron Sims, who's now in HUD, really pointed us there and said, this is where poverty exists in the county, so we want you to work there. It was also turning out that the high housing costs in Seattle were driving people out of the city, low-income families, and then new families, immigrants were coming, were skipping the city and moving to the suburbs, so it was more affordable. But what we found in White Center, and I heard a bit of this on the last panel, is there was a real lack of institutional capacity. Part of that was because it was unincorporated. Part of it was because there was a real change of population. There were scattered social service organizations. There really wasn't a center in White Center. And so what we did was really build off of other relationships we'd had in the Seattle area and really started working there. And we did a couple things to build capacity. One, we came up with a community organizing model we called Trusted Advocates. And the real question became, how do you reach 30 or more different immigrant refugee communities with different languages, different cultural styles, different preferences? How do you get them? Well, we needed to really train a set of translators, not simply of language, but of aspirations, of getting people involved. So we came up with this technique we called Trusted Advocates, where we trained 30, 40, 50 leaders over the years to work with folks. We also built a new community development corporation. We worked with LISC, Local Initiative Support Corporation. There was no group that was devoted to rebuilding the community. And they, in turn, used some EDA dollars and other resources to kind of get that off the ground. We lured in a bunch of state and local officials, the housing authorities, State Department of Human Services, local police chief, a whole range of folks to be a partners group, kind of a think tank that would work with us and work with community leaders about what could be done. Now, in doing all that, we started with really helping current agendas get moving. We didn't just come in with new stuff. So we helped the Housing Authority get their Hope 6 application approved through a lot of community process. We helped a school bond issue that had been turned down for 10 or 15 years get passed that was going to rebuild 5 or 6 new schools. And this was kind of grassroots, mobilizing, getting people involved, and so on. We also started a bunch of new things, an earned income tax credit campaign to connect residents with work supports and benefits.